This is an ultra top secret special report entitled, "We Are Already in World War III." Most people do not know this, but World War III has already started. I'm sure you're thinking right now, no way. I definitely know if we were in World War III. Would you though? Everyone thinks that World War III would start with a bang, nuclear missiles going off, or thousands of tanks crossing into Europe or into Russia, or China launching a naval armada against Taiwan or attacking American targets. No. If China wanted to take on the United States, it couldn't do it directly. Even if they did invade America somehow, U.S. nuclear launches would mutually assure destruction of China and the rest of the world. China would instead implement a plan of slowly weakening the U.S. by disrupting social unity, financial resources, supply chains, food manufacturing plants. They would use infiltration, insurgency, traitorous politicians, installing saboteurs and hiring street muscles such as Antifa and BLM, and place Chinese police forces inside the U.S. And I will show you in future episodes that they have done just that. They would also help install a bribed and blackmailed U.S. politician into the office of the presidency in the form of Joe Biden and instruct him to start a war with Russia, as we have seen done in just the last few days. Biden has put missiles in the Ukraine, is ready to fire U.S. missiles into Russia. A war between Russia and America would allow China to move in more easily. China would want to weaken the United States and then absorb it. They would weaken it by putting in a Chinese puppet into the White House with the help of a controlled media. The controlled media would help keep people distracted while China made its move, while that traitor's false president distracted the populace from knowing what was happening. You didn't know this because the controlled U.S. media has kept it covered up. But China has started World War III when they released a certain something into the world by releasing it just before the 2020 election. They didn't even have the expertise to make this certain something. They needed help from Fauci and U.S. labs to make it. When China released this certain something in the world, they started World War III, an obvious act of war on the rest of the world. China did this just as massive protests in Hong Kong were threatening to overthrow its government, and during an election year in the U.S. in which a nationalistic president threatened to harm China by increasing tariffs and stopping a Chinese invasion of America that had been planned and implemented for over 40 years. Barack Obama was to set up America for invasion from within, and Hillary Clinton was going to be in place to continue the treachery and invasion of the United States. Certain high-level U.S. military officials knew what was coming and devised a plan to stop China from absorbing the United States. They approached Donald Trump, a very popular media mogul, and asked him to run for the presidency. After thinking about it for a few days, he decided that he had to help and that he couldn't just watch the world burn. With the military's help, Trump was able to circumvent the traps set by the FBI and CIA, and he won the election. Once in the White House, Trump and his benefactors avoided more traps set up by traitorous politicians and intelligence agencies and operatives, and set the U.S. on a path for a counterinsurgency to counter the original insurgency started by deep state puppets and CIA assets Barack Obama, Hillary and Bill Clinton, Bush Sr., and Bush Jr. While in the White House, Trump wrote an executive order that said that human rights abuses and criminal behavior was so rampant in America that the U.S. military was needed to combat it. Any corporation ran by anyone that had human rights abuses or traitorous practices against the American government would lose the whole corporation to the U.S. government. That's why thousands of CEOs such as Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and the CEO of Google all resigned from their corporations around the same time, followed by thousands of others. It's too late, though. He also wrote an executive order that said that any countries that interfered in U.S. elections were committing acts of war. By releasing a certain something into the world and releasing vials of the certain something in U.S. airports during an election year, and by participating in ballot tampering, China started a war with America. By the way, by interfering in U.S. elections and tampering with electronic voting machines, politicians, judges, media personalities, And American movie stars, Great Britain also has committed acts of war against the United States. You will be surprised to know this, but Great Britain is not an ally, but an enemy of the United States and must be dealt with. Hopefully the U.S. can expose the British quote-unquote royal crime family, expose the criminal acts of war committed by the Windsors and take them down, liberating British non-citizens and subjects from the monarchy and make them citizens again. Since they are unable or unwilling to be more than just subjects to a cruel and inhuman monarchy, by honeypotting politicians and judges and putting them into blackmailable situations on Epstein Island, Jeffrey Epstein, with ties to Britain and Mossad, could dictate U.S. policy. P. Diddy ran a similar honeypot scheme. Israel has committed acts of war against the United States on multiple occasions in the past. First, when doing so by firing on a U.S. naval vessel in the USS Liberty in the Mediterranean Sea during the Six-Day War. It's hard to believe that we are in World War III, right? Well, let's look at what has transpired in the last year or so. Recently has been brought to national attention that 20,000 Chinese military-aged males have been detained and released crossing the southern border within the last year, thanks to the bribed and blackmailed Chinese puppet Joe Biden. They are coming in to sabotage and assist with the Chinese takeover of the U.S. Within the last few years, many food production plants have been burned down due to arson. Multiple chicken production plants, thousands of head of cattle destroyed on multiple occasions, and with the use of directed energy weapons, and the U.S. media has ignored it. A Chinese surveillance device was allowed to fly over the U.S. to scout for the impending attack, and nothing was done about it. China has been buying land around U.S. military bases. The certain something that they released vaccination hoax has made hundreds, maybe tens of thousands of military men and women quit the military with the choice of die to a poisonous agent designed to cull the population or live and leave the military, thereby weakening it. Diabolical, isn't it? Chinese and deep state-owned social media platforms such as TikTok and Twitter at the time, but now bought by Elon Musk, have brainwashed the children of the United States into thinking that Trump was a criminal, communism is cool, and that the real traitors, such as Obama and Hillary Clinton, were innocent, and that defending the U.S. would be defending a racist nation. All while millions of people want to come to this evil and racist nation because of the promise of having a better life. By enticing millions to come into the country, Joe Biden has swamped cities with criminals in the attempt to weaken America by bankrupting it, by allowing illegal aliens and alien criminals back into the streets after committing crimes in a turnstile revolving door where DAs are paid off by George Soros and are overrunning medical and social services. Cartels make billions on human trafficking and drug sales because of Joe Biden and his traitorous cronies. Foreign gang members are taking over the streets. Mexico, because of its political and politicians' ties with drug cartels through graft and bribes and payoffs, is complicit in the death of countless U.S. citizens through fentanyl poisoning and deletions of humans smuggled into the United States. Because of the deletions of U.S. citizens, Mexican cartels have also committed acts of war against the U.S. Chinese agents such as Fang Fang, a Bond villain if I ever heard one, seduce U.S. politicians to betray the American people. In that category is Mitch McConnell, a high-ranking rhino Republican who is married to a Chinese national and has received a $25 million quote-unquote gift from her father, who is a high-level Communist China Party member. It could easily be seen as a bribe for favors and failures during Mitch's lying on sensitive issues. He has also provided, probably, the CCP with information. Reporters in 2022 pushed their way into a vaccine center in New York City only to find it full of Chinese lab people. Chinese police forces have been allowed to operate in the United States. 20,000 plus Chinese military-aged males crossing into the porous border could join up with these police forces already in the U.S. Google helped China set up its social credit score apparatus, while BlackRock does the same in the United States. High-level military officials went before Congress and testified that Google's interactions with China were tantamount to treason. Google, Facebook, and YouTube have been guilty of rigging elections against Trump. Feinstein's chauffeur was a Chinese agent. Feinstein's husband had business dealings with China, showing they get money if they keep a Chinese agent as their driver. The Clintons also had Chinese agents in the White House, and Hillary purposely had her own servers while Secretary of State that was plugged directly into Chinese intelligence services. Speaking of Secretaries of State, Mike Pompeo has said that the American people that the Chinese had a list of politicians that they graded as helpful, extremely helpful to the Chinese Communist Party, or not at all. They then approached those politicians. Politicians, the DOJ, and judges we have recently seen have been weaponized to charge the major political opponents of the Democratic Chinese Communist Traitors Party with made-up nonsensical crimes. We have seen this in the last few days, where Trump has been assailed by numerous bogus cases. If they could do this to him, a billionaire with the best lawyers in the world, they could easily do it to you, and will. So as you can see, World War III has already started. It's time for you to prepare yourself. But all is not lost. Trump and the Patriots have foreseen this, knew the traitors' playbooks, and are winning. A massive sting operation is about to unfold, and hundreds of thousands of traitors will be detained. God bless America.